A crazy woman stabbed my 7-year-old daughter with a pen on our flight to Disney World. My little girl was bleeding and crying while the woman smiled and said she deserved it. The woman had no idea that I was the pilot flying the plane she was trapped on. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching, also like and subscribe for more stories. The screaming started at 30,000 feet above the clouds, but it wasn't from the plane engines. It was from my 7-year-old daughter Lily, bleeding and crying in the airplane aisle while a monster in designer clothes stood over her with a bloody pen in her hand, smiling like she had just won the lottery. My name is Captain David Mitchell, and I've been flying commercial aircraft for 15 years. I've handled emergency landings during thunderstorms that would terrify experienced pilots, severe turbulence that threw passengers around like rag dolls, engine failures that required split-second decisions to save hundreds of lives, and every crisis you can imagine at cruising altitude. I've navigated through blizzards where visibility was zero, landed planes with damaged landing gear, and talked nervous co-pilots through their first emergency situations. But nothing in my extensive training, nothing in all my years of experience dealing with life-and-death situations, prepared me for the moment I would learn that someone had deliberately hurt my innocent child while I was locked in the cockpit, flying the very plane where this nightmare was happening. The day started like any other family vacation, full of excitement and hope for creating beautiful memories together. Lily and I were traveling from Denver to Orlando for her first trip to Disney World, a special daddy-daughter adventure we had planned meticulously for months after her mother died from cancer 6 months earlier. Every detail had been carefully arranged: the hotel with a view of Cinderella Castle, reservations at her favorite character dining restaurants, fast passes for all the rides she had been dreaming about, and matching Mickey Mouse ears that we would wear together in the Magic Kingdom. Lily had been through so much pain and heartbreak watching her mama waste away in sterile hospital beds, sitting quietly through countless chemotherapy sessions while other children her age were playing in parks, and finally saying goodbye to the only mother she had ever known when the cancer finally claimed Sarah's beautiful, gentle spirit. This trip was supposed to be about healing those invisible wounds, about making new happy memories that could coexist with the sadness, about showing my little girl that life could still hold magic and wonder and joy even after losing someone so important to our hearts. Lily was the sweetest, most innocent child you could ever meet, the kind of little girl who made everyone around her smile just by being herself. She had inherited her mother's gentle heart and compassionate soul, always sharing her toys with other kids without being asked, always saying please and thank you even when she was upset, always trying to help others even when she was struggling with her own grief and confusion. She was small for her age, barely 40 pounds soaking wet, with blonde curls that bounced when she walked and bright green eyes that sparkled with curiosity and wonder about everything around her. She loved butterflies because they reminded her of angels, ice cream because Mama used to take her for sundaes on special occasions, bedtime stories because they helped her fall asleep when the sadness felt too heavy, and making friends with everyone she met because she believed all people were basically good. Because I was the pilot on this flight, Lily was traveling as an unaccompanied minor in first class while I worked in the cockpit, following airline protocols that ensured pilot families received proper care and attention during flights. The flight attendants, Jessica Rodriguez and Maria Santos, had promised to take special care of her during the 4-hour journey from Denver to Orlando. They were experienced professionals who understood the responsibility of caring for children traveling alone, especially a little girl who had recently lost her mother and was still processing that enormous grief. They set her up with coloring books featuring her favorite Disney princesses, gave her extra cookies and apple juice, brought her a soft blanket and pillow for napping, and made sure she felt safe and comfortable while Daddy was working to get them safely to their magical destination. Jessica even sat with Lily during takeoff, holding her hand and explaining how airplanes worked because Lily was curious about what Daddy did in the cockpit. Everything was perfect until that evil woman decided to destroy our lives for no reason other than her own twisted pleasure and deep-seated hatred. Karen Blackwood had been our neighbor in the prestigious Sunset Hills HOA community for 2 long years, and she had made those 2 years a living hell for my family through constant harassment, complaints, and deliberate attempts to make our lives miserable. She was a 50-year-old real estate agent who acted like she owned the entire neighborhood and everyone living in it, treating homeowners like subjects in her personal kingdom. She had short gray hair that she kept in a severe, unflattering style, cold blue eyes that never showed any warmth or human kindness, and a mouth that seemed designed specifically for complaining and criticizing everyone around her. Her house was a monument to obsessive control and perfectionism, with every blade of grass cut to exactly the same height, every flower planted in precise geometric patterns, every outdoor decoration positioned with mathematical precision. She spent hours each day patrolling the neighborhood looking for violations of community standards, photographing minor infractions, and filing formal complaints against families who dared to live normal lives in their own homes. From the very first day we moved our belongings into our new home, Karen had targeted my family with constant harassment and nitpicking complaints about everything we did. She called the HOA board about our grass being 1 inch taller than her arbitrary standards demanded. She reported us for leaving our trash cans out 30 minutes past the designated pickup time, even though the garbage truck was running late that week. She complained about Lily's small pink bicycle being parked in our own driveway, claiming it was an eyesore that hurt property values and made the neighborhood look unprofessional. When my wife Sarah was going through chemotherapy and lost all her beautiful brown hair, Karen actually had the nerve to suggest that Sarah should wear a wig when getting the mail because her bald head made the neighbors uncomfortable and created a negative impression for potential home buyers. But Karen's cruelty reached truly despicable new levels after Sarah died and left us devastated and broken. She complained about the cars parked on our street during the funeral reception, saying that grieving family members were disrupting the neighborhood's peace and creating a carnival atmosphere that was inappropriate for a respectable community. She reported us for having too many sympathy flower arrangements on our porch, claiming they attracted bees and created a public nuisance that violated health and safety regulations. When Lily would cry at night missing her mama, having nightmares about hospitals and angels, Karen would bang on our shared fence with a baseball bat and yell for us to keep the noise down because some people had to work in the morning and needed their sleep. The worst incident happened just 3 weeks before our Disney trip, an encounter that should have warned me about the depths of Karen's hatred and vindictiveness. Lily had been playing quietly in our backyard with her new puppy, a gentle golden retriever named Hope that we had adopted from the local animal shelter to help her cope with losing her mother. Hope was a therapy dog in training, specially selected for her calm temperament and natural ability to provide comfort to grieving children. She barely barked at all, spending most of her time lying peacefully beside Lily while my daughter read books or colored pictures. Karen marched over to our fence that afternoon like a woman on a mission of destruction, her face red with manufactured outrage over some imagined transgression. She started screaming that the dog was barking too much and disturbing her afternoon meditation time, even though Hope had been silent for hours and was currently asleep in the shade of our apple tree. When I calmly explained that Hope barely made any noise and was actually helping Lily heal from the trauma of losing her mother, Karen's response revealed the true depth of her evil nature. "That child needs to get over her mother's death and stop acting like a victim," she said with cold hatred dripping from every word like poison. "Death is a natural part of life, and she's old enough to deal with it like an adult without disrupting the entire neighborhood with her emotional problems and attention-seeking behavior." I had to physically restrain myself from responding to her cruelty the way she deserved, from telling her exactly what I thought of someone who would attack a grieving 7-year-old who had just lost her mother. This woman was deliberately targeting an innocent child who was struggling with the biggest loss of her young life, showing absolutely no human decency or compassion for a little girl's pain and confusion. When Karen somehow discovered that Lily and I were taking a vacation to Disney World, she became obsessed with ruining our trip and destroying what was supposed to be a healing experience for my daughter. She researched our flight information through her real estate connections, somehow managed to find out our departure details despite airline privacy policies, and actually booked herself on the same flight just to continue her campaign of harassment and intimidation. She told other neighbors that she was going to make sure that spoiled brat learned some manners about how the real world works, and that she would teach them both a lesson they'll never forget about thinking they're special. The night before our flight, Karen called me at home with a voice full of false sweetness that barely concealed her malicious intentions. "I hope you and your daughter have a wonderful trip," she said with obvious insincerity. "Children can be so unpredictable on airplanes, can't they? Sometimes they need firm guidance from adults who understand proper behavior." The threat in her words was unmistakable, but I never imagined she would actually follow through with violence against an innocent child. On the morning of our flight, I was running through my standard pre-flight checklist in the cockpit, reviewing weather conditions, fuel calculations and safety protocols with my co-pilot Captain Roberts, when Jessica, our lead flight attendant, came to brief me about the passenger manifest and any special considerations for the flight. She mentioned that we had an unaccompanied minor in first-class seat 2A and that there was also a woman in coach who had specifically asked detailed questions about the child during the boarding process. "She seemed unusually interested in your daughter, Captain Mitchell," Jessica said with obvious concern in her voice, her professional instincts telling her something wasn't right about the interaction. "She asked which specific seat Lily was assigned to, how long the flight would take, whether children were allowed to move around the cabin freely, and what the protocols were for unaccompanied minors. Something about her questions felt strange and inappropriate, but I thought maybe she was just a nervous flyer who was concerned about potential disruptions. My stomach dropped with dread when Jessica described the woman in detail. Gray hair cut in a severe style, cold blue eyes that seemed to look right through people, expensive clothes that screamed money and status, and a demanding attitude that made the gate agents uncomfortable and eager to get her seated quickly. It was Karen Blackwood, and she had followed us onto this plane with obviously malicious intent, planning some kind of confrontation or harassment that could ruin our vacation before it even began. "Keep a very close eye on my daughter," I told Jessica urgently, my protective instincts as a father overriding my professional demeanor. "That woman is our neighbor, and she's been systematically harassing my family for months since my wife died. She has a vendetta against us, and I don't trust her intentions. Don't let her near Lily under any circumstances, and call me immediately if she tries to approach or interact with my daughter in any way." Jessica promised to watch over Lily carefully and alert the entire crew about the potential threat, but she had no idea how truly dangerous Karen really was or how far she was willing to go to satisfy her hatred. None of us did. We were thinking in terms of verbal harassment or complaints to the airline, not physical violence against a 7-year-old child. The first 3 hours of the flight went smoothly and peacefully, exactly as I had hoped for this special trip with my daughter. Jessica updated me regularly through the cockpit communication system about Lily's activities and behavior. She was coloring detailed pictures of Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, eating animal crackers and sipping apple juice, chatting happily with the flight attendants about all the exciting rides she wanted to try at Disney World, and even helping Jessica distribute extra pillows to other passengers who looked uncomfortable. She seemed relaxed and genuinely excited for the first time in months, finally acting like a normal 7-year-old instead of a grieving child carrying the enormous weight of loss on her small shoulders. But Karen was watching everything from her coach seat like a predator stalking prey, waiting patiently for the perfect opportunity to strike when the flight attendants would be distracted and unable to immediately intervene. She had spent the first part of the flight studying the cabin layout, observing the crew's routines, and planning her attack with the cold calculation of someone who had thought through every detail of her revenge. The attack happened during the beverage service when most passengers were occupied with their drinks and snacks and the cabin lights were dimmed for the afternoon movie showing. Jessica and Maria were busy in the galley preparing the next round of beverages and snacks when Karen made her move with the timing of someone who had been planning this moment for hours. She had somehow obtained a heavy metal pen from the business class amenity kit during a bathroom trip, a promotional pen with a sharp-pointed tip that could easily be used as a weapon to cause serious injury to a small child. According to the detailed witness statements I would read later during the investigation, Karen approached Lily's seat with a fake smile and artificially sweet voice, pretending to be a friendly grandmother figure who just wanted to chat with a cute little girl. She told Lily that she recognized her from the neighborhood and wanted to say hello before they landed in Orlando. Lily, being the trusting, innocent child she was, smiled back politely and said hello just like her mama had taught her to do when adults spoke to her. "You know, little girl," Karen said loud enough for nearby passengers to hear, her voice dripping with false concern, "your father is a very important man flying this airplane. Some children might get too excited and cause problems that could put everyone in danger. We wouldn't want anything bad to happen because a child couldn't control herself, would we?" Lily looked confused and slightly frightened by this strange comment from a woman she barely knew. "I'm being good," she said quietly, her small voice trembling slightly. "The nice ladies gave me coloring books and I'm staying in my seat just like Daddy told me to. I don't want to cause problems for anyone." That's when Karen's mask of fake kindness slipped completely away, revealing the true monster lurking underneath her respectable exterior. "You think you're special because your daddy is the pilot," Karen hissed with venom dripping from every word, her voice becoming harsh and threatening. "You think you can do whatever you want and get away with it just because you lost your mommy. Well, I'm going to teach you that actions have consequences, you spoiled little brat who needs to learn her place in the world." Before anyone could react, before any adult could step in to protect her, before the flight attendants could return from the galley, Karen raised the heavy metal pen high above her head and brought it down with tremendous force into Lily's small shoulder, driving the sharp-pointed tip deep into my daughter's tender flesh with the deliberate intent to cause maximum pain and trauma. Lily's scream of pure agony and terror echoed through the entire airplane cabin like a siren of innocence being destroyed. It was a sound no parent should ever have to hear, a sound of complete bewilderment and pain from a child who couldn't understand why someone would hurt her deliberately when she had done absolutely nothing wrong. Blood immediately began soaking through her favorite pink Disney princess shirt, spreading in a dark crimson stain that grew larger and more horrifying with each passing second. That's what happens to children who don't know their place. Karen shouted triumphantly, holding the bloody pen like a trophy while my daughter collapsed back into her seat, crying hysterically and calling desperately for her daddy to come save her from this nightmare. The entire cabin erupted into complete chaos and pandemonium. Passengers began screaming and jumping out of their seats in shock and horror. Some people were frantically recording the incident with their phones, capturing evidence of the most senseless act of cruelty they had ever witnessed. Others were trying to help Lily while demanding to know why this insane woman had just stabbed an innocent child in front of dozens of horrified witnesses. Children started crying when they saw the blood, and several passengers became physically ill from witnessing such unexpected violence. Jessica rushed to Lily's aid with the speed and efficiency of someone trained for medical emergencies, immediately applying direct pressure to the wound while calling for the aircraft's medical kit. Maria simultaneously contacted the cockpit to inform me that there had been a serious violent incident involving my daughter. The words that came crackling through my headset destroyed my world in an instant and changed everything I thought I knew about human nature. Captain Mitchell, your daughter has been seriously injured by another passenger. She's bleeding heavily and needs immediate emergency medical attention. We need to declare a medical emergency and land immediately at the nearest airport with trauma facilities. My hands started shaking uncontrollably on the controls as the full magnitude and horror of the situation hit me like a physical blow to the chest. Someone had deliberately hurt my little girl while she was trapped 30,000 feet in the air with nowhere to run, no way to escape, and no way for me to protect her from this unprovoked attack. She was bleeding and terrified and calling for me, but I couldn't leave the cockpit without potentially endangering every passenger on the plane. How severe is the injury? I asked, fighting desperately to keep my voice steady and professional while my heart was literally breaking into pieces inside my chest. She's been stabbed in the shoulder with a metal pen, Jessica reported, her own voice shaking with emotion and shock. The bleeding is significant but appears to be under control for now. The passenger who attacked her is Karen Blackwood from your neighborhood. She's bragging about what she did and claiming she was defending herself, but every single witness saw her attack Lily completely unprovoked. The rage that filled my chest at that moment was unlike anything I had ever experienced in my entire life. This evil, twisted woman had deliberately hurt my innocent child, had caused her physical pain and psychological trauma that would last for years, had turned what was supposed to be a healing vacation into a nightmare that would haunt both of us forever. The urge to abandon my post and personally deal with Karen was almost overwhelming, but my training and responsibility to the safety of every person aboard kept me focused on getting the plane down safely. But I was the captain of this aircraft, legally and morally responsible for the safety of every single person on board. I had to put my professional training before my personal emotions, my duty to all passengers before my desire for immediate revenge against the monster who had hurt my child. I had to get this plane on the ground safely so that Lily could receive proper medical care and Karen could face the full weight of federal justice for what she had done. Declare a medical emergency immediately, I told my co-pilot, Captain Roberts, who was staring at me in shock and disbelief. Contact Denver Center and request immediate clearance to divert to the nearest major airport with full medical trauma facilities. Get paramedics and federal law enforcement standing by to arrest Karen Blackwood the moment we touch down. While I worked frantically to coordinate our emergency landing, communicating with air traffic control and calculating fuel requirements for our diversion, Karen was creating even more chaos and horror in the cabin behind me. Instead of showing any remorse for stabbing a 7-year-old child, instead of recognizing the magnitude of her crime, she was actually bragging about her actions to anyone who would listen, proud of the pain she had inflicted on an innocent little girl. That spoiled brat had it coming, she announced loudly to nearby passengers, her voice filled with satisfaction and vindictive pleasure. Her father thinks he's special because he's the pilot, and she thinks she can act however she wants just because her mother is dead. Well, I showed her that some people won't tolerate entitled children disrupting everyone else's peaceful flight. Mrs. Chin, a retired elementary school teacher from San Francisco who was traveling to visit her grandchildren, was so horrified by Karen's callous words that she immediately started recording the conversation with her phone, recognizing that this evidence would be crucial for prosecution. "Ma'am, you just stabbed an innocent child who was sitting quietly and bothering no one," Mrs. Chin said in complete disbelief, her voice shaking with outrage. "She's 7 years old and she just lost her mother. How can you possibly justify hurting a grieving little girl who has done absolutely nothing to deserve this?" Karen's response was captured on video and would later become the most damning piece of evidence in her prosecution, revealing the true depths of her evil nature. Some children need to learn respect and proper behavior the hard way, Karen said with chilling satisfaction, showing no remorse whatsoever for her actions. Her mother is dead, so someone has to discipline her properly and teach her that the world doesn't revolve around her problems. Maybe now she'll think twice before acting entitled just because her daddy flies airplanes for a living. The entire cabin fell into stunned silence at those words, even the crying baby seeming to sense the evil that had just been revealed. Passengers sat in shocked disbelief as they absorbed the pure malice they had just witnessed. This woman had not only stabbed a grieving child but was openly mocking the death of her mother as justification for her unprovoked violence. Dr. Amanda Foster, a pediatric surgeon from Children's Hospital Colorado who happened to be traveling in business class for a medical conference, immediately came forward to help treat Lily's injuries with professional medical expertise. She examined the wound carefully and determined that while it was deep and extremely painful, the pen had fortunately missed any major arteries, organs, or nerve clusters. The bleeding was now under control thanks to Jessica's quick first aid, but Lily would definitely need proper emergency medical attention and probably 12 to 15 stitches once we landed. "You're going to be okay, sweetheart," Dr. Foster whispered gently to Lily while cleaning and properly bandaging the wound with supplies from the aircraft's medical kit. "Your daddy is flying this plane to get you help as fast as humanly possible. You're being very brave and I want you to know that this is absolutely not your fault. The bad lady made a terrible, evil choice, but you didn't do anything wrong at all." Lily looked up at Dr. Foster with tears streaming down her innocent face, her green eyes filled with pain and confusion that no child should ever have to experience. "I want my daddy," she whispered through her tears. "I want my mama to come back and make it stop hurting. Why did that mean lady hurt me when I was being good? I was staying in my seat just like daddy told me to." Those heartbreaking words, spoken by my injured daughter while I was helpless to comfort her, will haunt my dreams and nightmares for the rest of my life. She was only 7 years old, already dealing with the devastating loss of her mother, and now a complete stranger had attacked her for no reason other than pure malice and twisted hatred. Meanwhile, other passengers were working together to physically restrain Karen, who was still trying to justify her actions and actually threatening to attack Lily again if she didn't learn her lesson properly. She showed absolutely no remorse, no recognition that she had committed a serious federal crime, no understanding that her victim was an innocent child who had done nothing to deserve such brutal treatment. "I should have hit her harder and taught her a better lesson," Karen said to anyone who would listen, her words being recorded by multiple passengers. Maybe then she would finally understand that some people won't tolerate spoiled behavior from entitled children. Her father might be the pilot, but that doesn't make them better than everyone else or give them special privileges. I coordinated our emergency diversion to Kansas City International Airport, working intensively with air traffic control to get priority handling and ensure that medical vehicles and federal law enforcement would be waiting for our arrival. Every single minute felt like an hour while I knew my daughter was hurt and scared in the cabin behind me, calling for daddy while I was powerless to reach her. The longest 45 minutes of my entire life passed while we descended toward Kansas City, where ambulances and FBI agents were standing by. The moment our wheels touched the runway and we reached the gate, I activated emergency evacuation procedures that would allow medical personnel to board immediately and provide professional care for Lily. I had never moved so fast in my life, racing from the cockpit through the cabin to find my daughter being carefully carried off the plane by experienced paramedics while Karen was being arrested by federal air marshals who had been waiting specifically for her. Lily's face immediately lit up with relief when she saw me running toward her, but she was clearly in significant pain and deeply traumatized by what had happened to her. "Daddy," she cried, reaching desperately for me with her uninjured arm. "The bad lady hurt me with a sharp thing and it hurt so much. I was being good just like you told me, but she hurt me anyway and said mean things about Mama." I held her as carefully as I could while the paramedics loaded her into the waiting ambulance, my own tears falling freely as I whispered words of comfort and love. "I know, baby girl," I whispered through my tears. "Daddy is here now and the bad lady can never hurt you again. You were absolutely perfect and this was completely not your fault. Daddy loves you so much." As we rushed toward the hospital with sirens blaring, I watched through the ambulance window as Karen was being led away in handcuffs by federal agents, still protesting her innocence and claiming that she was somehow the real victim in this situation. She showed no concern whatsoever for the child she had stabbed, no remorse for the trauma she had caused, no recognition that her actions were evil and completely inexcusable. At the hospital, Doctors confirmed that Lily's wound required 12 stitches but had not caused any permanent physical damage to muscles, nerves, or organs. The physical healing would be relatively quick and complete, but the psychological impact of being violently attacked by a stranger would require months of intensive therapy and counseling to address properly. She kept asking the same heartbreaking questions over and over: why the lady had hurt her, what she had done wrong to deserve it, and whether bad people could hurt her again even when Daddy was nearby to protect her. The federal investigation moved with impressive speed and efficiency thanks to the dozens of eyewitnesses and multiple phone recordings of Karen's detailed confession. She was formally charged with assault on a minor, aggravated assault on an aircraft, terrorist threats, endangering the safety of a commercial flight, and federal hate crimes enhancement due to her targeting of a grieving child. Her own recorded words, captured by horrified passengers, provided overwhelming evidence of her guilt and clearly demonstrated her malicious intent. During her FBI interrogation, Karen continued to show absolutely no remorse for her actions or recognition of their severity. She insisted that she had been teaching a valuable life lesson to a spoiled, entitled child, and stated that she would do it again if given the chance. She claimed that Lily's behavior had been disruptive to other passengers and dangerous to flight safety, despite the fact that every single witness confirmed Lily had been sitting quietly, coloring peacefully, and bothering absolutely no one. When federal investigators asked Karen to explain exactly what Lily had done to provoke such a violent attack, she couldn't provide any specific examples of misbehavior or disruption. She simply repeated her twisted belief that children of pilots think they're special and need to be put in their place, through violence if necessary to teach them proper respect for authority. The prosecution built an absolutely overwhelming case against Karen using witness testimony, video evidence, medical records, flight data, and her own recorded confessions made both on the airplane and during interrogation. Her court-appointed federal public defender tried desperately to argue that she had suffered some kind of mental breakdown or temporary insanity, but Karen's own words and actions proved that her attack was carefully planned, deliberately executed, and motivated by long-standing hatred toward my family. During the trial, the prosecution played multiple recordings of Karen's statements from the airplane, including her cruel mockery of Sarah's death and her explicit threats to hurt Lily again if she didn't learn proper behavior. The jury was visibly horrified by the callousness of her words and the complete absence of any remorse she showed for stabbing an innocent, grieving child. Dr. Foster provided expert medical testimony about Lily's injuries and the long-term psychological trauma that children experience when attacked by strangers. She explained in detail how the incident had shattered Lily's sense of safety and trust in the world, requiring ongoing therapy to help her process the violence she had experienced and rebuild her ability to feel secure in public spaces. Mrs. Chin and dozens of other passengers testified about Karen's behavior on the plane, describing her obvious pleasure at causing pain and her continued threats against Lily even after stabbing her. Their testimony painted a clear picture of someone who had genuinely enjoyed hurting a child and felt absolutely no guilt about her actions. The most powerful and heartbreaking testimony came from Lily herself, delivered through a carefully conducted video interview with a specialized child psychologist since she was too young to testify in federal court directly. In her innocent 7-year-old voice, she described how the mean lady had pretended to be nice before hurting her with the sharp pen. "I don't understand why she was so angry at me," Lily said in the recording that brought tears to everyone's eyes. "I was being good and staying in my seat just like Daddy always tells me to do. But she said really mean things about my mama being dead, and then she hurt me really bad with the sharp thing. I thought maybe I had done something wrong to make her mad, but the nice doctor lady said it wasn't my fault at all." There wasn't a single dry eye in the courtroom when that video played. Even the hardened federal judge had to pause proceedings for several minutes to compose himself after hearing my daughter's confused, innocent account of being attacked by someone she had never met before. Karen's defense team tried desperately to argue that she had been under severe stress from work pressures and personal problems, but the prosecution countered with extensive evidence of her long history of systematically harassing my family and her obvious premeditation in booking the same flight specifically to target and hurt Lily. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all federal charges. Karen showed no emotion whatsoever when the verdicts were read, still apparently believing deep in her twisted mind that she had done nothing wrong by stabbing a 7-year-old child. During the sentencing hearing, the federal judge delivered a scathing statement that brought justice for Lily and complete condemnation for Karen's evil actions. "Mrs. Blackwood, you have been convicted of one of the most senseless, cruel and cowardly acts I have encountered in 25 years on the federal bench," the judge said with obvious disgust. You deliberately targeted and violently attacked a 7-year-old child who had done absolutely nothing to harm you or anyone else. Your victim was a grieving daughter traveling with her father to create happy memories after losing her mother to cancer. Instead of showing basic human compassion for a child's loss, you chose to inflict additional trauma and physical pain on an innocent little girl. Karen was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation with strict conditions. She was also ordered to pay full restitution for Lily's medical expenses, ongoing therapy costs, and the trauma counseling that would be required for many years to come. Most importantly, she received a lifetime federal restraining order prohibiting any contact with Lily or our family, and a permanent ban from commercial airline travel. The HOA immediately expelled Karen from our community and issued a formal written apology to our family. They also implemented comprehensive new policies specifically prohibiting harassment of residents and requiring extensive background checks for all board members to prevent future situations where someone with Karen's obvious mental instability could gain power over other families. Lily's recovery was slow but steady, marked by both setbacks and breakthroughs. She required 6 months of intensive therapy to process the trauma of being attacked by a stranger, but she gradually regained her sense of safety and trust in the world around her. The trip to Disney World was postponed for obvious reasons, but we eventually took that magical vacation 8 months later, creating the happy memories we had originally planned and proving that evil cannot permanently destroy hope and joy. Today, Lily is a thriving 10-year-old who has learned that while genuinely bad people do exist in the world, there are many more good people who will always stand up to protect innocent children from harm. She still has a small scar on her shoulder from Karen's attack, but she calls it her brave mark, and says it reminds her that she survived something terrible and became even stronger because of it. Karen served her full sentence and was released 2 years ago under strict federal supervision. According to the terms of her probation, she's not allowed to travel on commercial aircraft without special federal permission and must undergo regular psychological evaluation and anger management counseling. She lost her real estate license, her home, her reputation, and most of her savings, facing the full consequences of choosing to attack an innocent child. Most importantly, she learned that actions always have consequences, and that hurting defenseless children will result in the complete weight of federal justice being brought down upon the perpetrator. Lily's story is ultimately one of resilience, healing, and the triumph of good over evil in this world. She survived a senseless attack and emerged stronger, surrounded by people who love and protect her unconditionally. And Karen Blackwood learned that some mistakes can never be undone, and some victims have fathers who will never stop fighting for justice. That's the ending Karen never expected when she decided to bring her twisted hatred onto an airplane and attack my innocent daughter. But it's exactly the justice that Lily deserved, and exactly the consequences that Karen earned through her own evil choices.